Good morning, Year 12s. Today I'm back with chapter 6. It's all about plantation owners, and it's mainly a chapter about the plantation owner, Mr. Whitechapel. Uh, we could um, we could see his inner thoughts and conflicts and his worries about his colleagues, about his peer plantation owners. So mainly, when you think about this chapter is written in a second person narration. It's written in second person narration. So I'll write it for you. It's written in second person narration with the words like you, second person narration. But at times, this chapter uses I, especially when it's written in italics. So when it is written in italics, it is first person narration. It is first person, and it mainly reveals the inner thoughts of the or inner voice. You could say that is actually the inner voice of Mr. Whitechapel. Inner voice of Mr. Whitechapel. So he talks to himself, and we are getting his inner voice, and all the inner voices are with anxiety and fear, especially of the especially he's worried about how the peers are going to criticize him. That's all his worry about. So it's a kind of multi-layered approach to dialogue. It's more like a multi-layered approach to dialogue because first person and second person are mixed together. So first person, especially when it's written in italics, to show mainly to show the inner thoughts of Mr. Whitechapel. And he's mainly in this chapter, he's going out and he's visiting the fellow plantation owners after the death of Chapel. And he's trying to restore his reputation because he lost his reputation a little bit when other people heard that Chapel was actually whipped to death and they were mocking him. And so he's now going into the den of plantation owners, his peer plantation owners. That's what we are actually seeing, and he actually feels as if he is going into a den because the plantation owners are ready to attack him, and they are like lions, and he's actually mentioning that later on. Anyway, let us look into the chapters, into this chapter. So I'm not reading the whole thing. You are split into two, divided your middle by contrary reasoning, the half that argues for you to go against the upper hand over the half that would have you collect cobwebs in the house. Before you know where you are, you have donned your best livery. So not reading the whole thing. Now this part is really important. You are heading for the club of your father and his friends helped to build, to face the son of his friend. So now he is going into the club, and the name of the club is actually Gentleman's Club, and it's actually his father, Mr. Whitechapel's father, and his friend's father who helped to who helped to build the club. So now he's going to see his father's friend's son. So it's mainly like generationally they are the owners of that club to show that they have been there for a long time. And you feel you should turn back and chain the gates of your plantation behind you, whether the shame, but you know how shame loves the retreat of shadows in order to blossom, how it cannot withstand the glare of scrutiny, the dub. Your friends believe you cannot do without them, and their insults because they are all you have. Again, he feels so lonely, and he feels so alienated because his philosophies and policies are a bit different to his colleagues. And again, the death of Chapel is actually has gone against his policies of being a lenient master, and that's why he is really worried here. So Whitechapel's elitism is clearly obvious here. He's of an elite position. He has got socially and economically, he is of high status, and even his friends are like that. So we could actually see, and they are the owners, or they are the ones who actually built the Gentleman's Club. So we could see the elitism of Mr. Whitechapel here in this chapter. And again, his inner thoughts, as I told you, his inner thoughts will be written in italics. My friends are my physicians, though they do not realize it, they are there to heal me. Deeds to your plantation belong to you. I am a Whitechapel. Yeah. And again, towards he didn't reach there, but before that, he feels like he need to go back, turn back, for God's sake. You don't need their mockery. They are lions, not men, and you're driving into their den. So comparing the other plantation owners or the peers as as if they are lions ready to attack Mr. Whitechapel, the plantation owner. They see your carriage as it draws up to the clubhouse. You climb down from the driver's seat. They wonder about the sanity of a man who owns hundreds of slaves yet choose to drive himself in a downpour. So the men are actually mocking him. The men's mockery of Whitechapel's desire to drive his own carriage actually highlights the other masters' hypocritical attitude towards slavery. So they believe that the slaves are to do such kind of jobs. So that's more like oppressing hundreds of slaves with an attitude of moral uprightness and independence. So they are actually wondering about the sanity of Mr. Whitechapel, who actually is driving himself. They are wondering why didn't he use one of his slaves to do that? Again, I'm skipping all that. You on again, he has got mixed worries. What brings me here? My need to be ridiculed. He know that he's going to be mocked by his peers. My search for vindication, my confusion. I know the questions I'm about to ask them. The answers are mine too, but I need to hear the words from a mouth I can watch. Now, he's again really confused there, but in this paragraph, he is trying to convince himself that this is his home. You own Whitechapel Plantation. Your father helped to build this club. You walk through the front door as if you are home. The floorboards under your feet welcome you with their familiar creak. So, home, the boards chatter, welcome home as you head into the club. So, through all those we could actually see that he's actually trying to convince himself that this is his home, that Gentleman's Club is actually his home, and his father has helped to build the club. So he feels he is trying to get that belongingness, even though he is not going to get that belongingness from his friends. He is actually trying to make his mind that now this is my home. And again, you enter a smoke filled room. They are baring their teeth like lions, as I told you before. They have been compared, the other plantation owners have been compared to like lions. Here is the man with the whip in his hand. Again, mockery. There are three cheers, hip hip, and then hooray. So it's mainly congratulations, well done, Whitechapel. So it's very symbolic. It's symbolic. It's symbolism there because they are actually cheering for the death of Chapel. So it symbolizes, or it's symbolic because they are actually cheering death. Again, that reinforces the horror of, that actually reinforces the horror of views of slavery. They are happy that Whitechapel has actually killed someone. So it's more like a cheering for death. And again, they are mockingly congratulating him. It's a kind of mockery as well. Mockingly congratulates Mr. Whitechapel. Mockingly, they are trying to congratulate Whitechapel. Congratulations, they say. That was some whip. Mock me all you want. It was a lesson that went wrong. Now, here, Whitechapel, the plantation owner, is trying to convince them that it was actually a lesson that went wrong. I didn't mean to do that. It was actually a lesson that actually went wrong. But the other plantation owners, they are trying to say one long overdue on your plantation. That is actually one long overdue on your plantation. That means they are trying to say that you should have done that punishment long ago. Again, I'm skipping so many things, but no time. The death of one slaves does not make me one of you. Again, here, Whitechapel, the plantation owner, is trying to convince others that death of one slave does not make me one among you. I'm still with my policies and philosophies that a slave must be, that we should, a happy slave is a satisfied slave. So he is trying to convince others that the death of one slave does not make him like one among them, the other plantation owners. And after all, you have said a hypocrite too. They are calling him as a hypocrite because the slaves have rights as humans. They are not just tools because they are reiterating all the dialogues of Mr. Whitechapel, because it was Mr. Whitechapel who always said that the slaves have rights as humans, as they are not just tools. Okay, what about this? Show them respect and they will work hard. Yeah, you always used to say that you show them respect and they will work hard. You always used to say that they may be inferior, but they are people like us. Lost your tongue, Whitechapel. So they are mocking Mr. Whitechapel, the plantation owner. What about all these dialogues that you have said? These were your policies and philosophies. What has happened to all these? Again, Rose, again, other people, again, I'm skipping some. Slaves are humans, whip them to death. There is proof. Okay, so again, they are mocking slaves. You have been saying that slaves are humans, but whipping them to death, there is proof. Again, I'm skipping some. My Christian beliefs are still absolutely true. Again, he's trying to use his Christian beliefs and he's trying to justify his action through Christianity. Um, and as to my friend, where are you? Yeah, and superiority, as we have tolerated your vanity, other people think that showing he's being a bit superior. Admit you felt alive for the first time in your life, Whitechapel. If not to us, then to yourself, or else you are lost. Well put, thank you, well put indeed. So basically, they are actually attacking Mr. Whitechapel's view, attacking Whitechapel's view. That's what they are trying to do, attacking as well as mockingly attacking his views. So here we could actually see that he is under threat. Mr. Whitechapel, the plantation owner, is under threat of being an outsider in society. And that very threat of not belonging to their group is actually sufficient enough for people like Whitechapel to abide by the status quo. And that mockery actually forces people to not to fight against injustice. I hope I'm making sense. So Mr. Whitechapel is trying to stand against racism, but then he is alienated. Everyone is mocking him and attacking him. And people couldn't stand that kind of alienation and that kind of such kind of an attack, and as a result they tried to conform to the standards or the conform to the racist standards of the society. Okay, so hope I'm making sense there. And again, I'm just scrolling down. Again, after so many conversations are happening there, I haven't got time to read the whole thing. But again, Whitechapel, you are an abolitionist. Some people say that you are an abolitionist. We have an abolitionist in our midst. So, what do you mean by an abolitionist? A person who would like to stop slavery, a reformer, one who favors abolishing slavery. Again, his peers are constantly mocking him and calling him as an abolitionist. But again, he says that we are all of us Christians of one sort or the other, but you, Whitechapel, you promote the African at the expense of your own white Christian brother. So again, he's being getting a little bit alienated there, and irony and hypocrisy, we could see all that. I promote the teachings of Christ and practice slavery. I do not practice slavery and hide my beliefs. Again, he is trying to convince others about his Christian beliefs, and he's still holding on to his belief. All right. Again, what are you doing? What you are doing will lead to a penury of poverty or a massive slave revolt, bringing us all grief. So they are trying to accuse Whitechapel by saying that if you are doing these kinds of things, we'll all be in poverty. There won't be any slave. There will be a massive slave revolt. Your slaves eat well, sleep well, do wrong, and get off lightly. They will start to think they are equals and should be free. Again, racism. So this is the view of the plantation owners. Plantation owners are imprisoned by their own belief system, and they believe that if there is no slaves, they will be poor. And if you're treating the slaves in a better way, they will start to think that they are our equals and should be free. So they are actually worried about all things. That's why your boy, dead from the whip, shines brightly. We thought at last Whitechapel, who was blind, could see, but no, you persevere in your own erroneous ways. So they are saying that at least when Chapel was whipped to death, they actually thought that Mr. Whitechapel's attitude has changed. But now they are confirming that no, you haven't changed. You're the same. You're still persevere your own erroneous ways. So keep all those in mind, gentlemen. I'm skipping all that. Your policy. reset. Not another lesson. I've got a different version in my book. Yeah. Your policy of a judicious whip failed to save him, again mocking him. There is only one whip which eats flesh, again personification there. The corruption of the whip, gentlemen, does not save plantations. It results in brother killing brother. It results in brother. So the corruption of the whip, gentlemen, does not save plantation. It results in brother killing brother. So you know that. Who is the brother killing brother? Brother is the Santos Jr. killing his half brother Chapel. So he's trying to say that we are all brothers. We are all connected and we are all brothers. What I have to say is strictly confidential. Now he is trying to say what has actually happened, and he is trying to reveal what has actually happened, and he says that this should be confidential. I was absent. That's his main. He's trying to put blame on others, and he is trying to recount what has actually happened. Yes, yes, but your absence does not absolve you. But again, they are attacking him and saying your absence does not free you from all this. Responsibility is one thing. I won't dodge. Again, Mr. Whitechapel says that responsibility is one thing. As Christians, hear without prejudice. As Christians, you have to hear me. You have to listen to me without any prejudice. Again, so many conversations happening there. We are Christians, but Christianity does not equal weakness. Again, their view. We treat our slaves with a firm hand. We are severe in the hope that other slaves will behave well out of fear. You can't mix God with slave business. God is for us, not for them. So many racist words. And we could actually see the plantation owners' views about racism. They actually support racism. Now, they did it for us. That's all we know. Our safe plantations put the pork on our plates. That means they are surviving. All the plantation owners are surviving because of the slaves. It's them or it's their work that actually puts pork on their plates, and even gives them wine. Again, by goodwill, Whitechapel, you mean we should free our stock? Do you mean that we have to free our stock? Where will that leave our offspring? So if we are going to abolish slavery, where will that abolishing of slavery leave our offspring? We'll be in utter penury. That's what they're saying. It will condemn them to the white slave auction block, and they will. So if there is no black slaves, it will actually our children will be slaves. That's what he is trying to say. So there is actually a fear that without slavery there will be economic ruin, and that they will be in utter penury, and that's why they are. That is their view, that they are supporting the slaves or supporting the slavery. Again, the other plantation owner says that if slaves were freed and paid, they would be friends, not enemies. If they were free, Whitechapel, you wouldn't see them. They would be gone, just like Chapel. So they are trying to convince Whitechapel. We are here because it suits us. They are here until we sell them. Take your man, the old slave. What is his name again? Now he's talking about, they are actually trying to bring about the conversation about Whitechapel, the old slave. The clever one his daddy named after himself. The one our fathers tried to buy for 20 years. They were trying, their fathers, the friends' fathers were trying to buy this Whitechapel, the slave. Emancipate him, try and free him. You know what you promote. You know what you promote. Demands that the plantation pay him arrears. So they will start asking the plantation owners to pay arrears. It's more like, if not, if we are trying to emancipate them, they will be gone. That's what they are trying to say. The women will want it. Then where will it be? Your trouble, Whitechapel, is that you see just one part of the picture. You're so close up, and you can't tell the wood from the tree. If you're so close up, you can't tell the wood from the tree. My slave, now, plantation owner Mr. Whitechapel speaks. My slave Whitechapel is noble and honorable, true. Now he's trying to defend his slave, defending Whitechapel. He's trying to defend Whitechapel, the slave. He couldn't accept people talking bad about Whitechapel. And he says, my slave Whitechapel is noble and honorable, true. He has been tested in ways that would break most men. He is a living proof that slaves are equal in every way. If you knew him better, you would know what I mean. You might change your view when you hear what I have to say. So he is actually trying to defend Whitechapel there. Let's guess one of your sons has copulated with a slave or your daughter. Now they are making a joke about interracism or interracial relationship. So the men's jokes about the possibility of interracial relationship actually highlights the very impossibility of such an event in their minds. They couldn't even accept such kind of an interracial marriage. So they are joking about it, and that joke actually highlight the very impossibility of such an event in their minds. And we clearly know that even the even the even Mr. Whitechapel didn't accept Lydia talking to Chapel. So uh, sorry, proceed. But Whitechapel, you spin your tail on the thread. You spin your tail out till the thread breaks. So they interrupted when Mr. Whitechapel was about to talk about uh, Whitechapel. And again, he talks about, I have lost the thread. All right, here is a tailored suit, fantastic and feeble. My runaway slave and overseer shared the same father. Now that's what he asked them to keep it confidential. My runaway slave, who is actually Chapel, and my overseer, who is that? Santos Jr. They share the same father. And who's that same father? Santos Sr. You have heard me speak of my slave, Whitechapel's nobility. Whitechapel, the father of your overseer. There is no African in the man. He is white as lily. He knew Santos Sr. He knew our fathers. Yes, Whitechapel, the slave, knew everyone. We are all interconnected. Well, he violated my slave's mistress. So he, Mr. Santos Sr., violated my slave. Who is my slave? Whitechapel. And look at the word, he calls Whitechapel my slave. He violated my slave's mistress. And who is mistress? Cook. She bore the son who ran away and got the whip my overseer wielded. Again, we are getting the same idea about Santos Sr.'s rape of Cook and the birth of the son Chapel, and again the Chapel running away from the plantation owner. We are getting all that again through Mr. Whitechapel here. Unbelievable. Were it not from your trustworthy lips, I thought Santos knew. The whole business was shrouded in secrecy. Again, this point has been mentioned third time. We could hear that the whole business about that raid was a closed business. It was shrouded in, the whole business was shrouded in secrecy. How would your Whitechapel watch and not intervene? Now they are questioning, why didn't your Whitechapel, the slave, didn't intervene, didn't stop it? And again, Whitechapel says that, the plantation owner says that this is very important. He lost his son. I'm going to do it in a different color because it's really important. You could use that. He lost his son in deference to authority. In deference. What do you mean by deference? In compliance. He lost his son because he was loyal. In compliance. Deference means compliance. The word deference means compliance. So he was actually loyal. Because of his loyalty, he lost his son. He was loyal to overseer and he didn't intervene, and as a result he lost his son. So that's what Mr. Whitechapel says. He lost a son. Who is he? Whitechapel. Whitechapel the slave. Whitechapel the slave. Whitechapel the slave lost a son. And who is that son lost? Chapel. In deference, in compliance to authority, as he was loyal to the authority like overseer or the deputy, he lost his son. And again, when the plantation owners heard this, they are saying, name your price. That slave of yours is a slaver's dream. And now, is he not for sale? He deserves your family name. Well said indeed. If he were white, he would still be rare. Even if he were white, he would still be rare. So we could actually see the nobility of Whitechapel the slave, and nobility, we could see his nobility. And Mr. Whitechapel is trying to defend and trying to put some good words about his slave, and he even talks about him when he says, "My slave." So, and is he not for sale? So the peers are actually trying to purchase the slave because he is such a good slave. He deserves your family name. And again, they are drinking a toast for to Whitechapel and his slave. Mm, Again, they are saying though Chapel is gone, still there is Whitechapel. Chapel dead, the whip buried, everything at least on the Whitechapel plantation with him, and there is still old Whitechapel. Whitechapel, whom no grave seems able to claim, loyal beyond the requisition of duty again. Here we could see the good words about Whitechapel. Whitechapel is still he is still there, he is the old Whitechapel, whom no grave seems able to claim, which means he has that longest life. No grave is going to claim his life, and he is such a loyal person beyond the requisition of his duty, beyond the requirements of his duty. And again, we could finally see his last words. At last, I am without shame. My name is restored to me. Who says that? The plantation owner says that. At last, um, can't highlight it, don't know why. Yeah. At last, I am without shame. My name is restored to me. So the chapter, Digor ends the chapter with an inner thought that at least I am without shame. What does that indicate to us? So Whitechapel prefers to stop thinking about his moral responsibility there. He stops worrying about Chapel's death. Instead, he takes joy in feeling part of a strong social group. And what does it reinforce? That reinforces the idea that Mr. Whitechapel is only superficially interested in treating slaves with respect, whereas his greatest concern is simply to maintain his status as a very powerful slave owner. And that's why he ends the chapter like that. At least I'm without shame now. My name is restored to me. His whole aim was to restore his name. He's least worried about Whitechapel the slave or his son who has been dead, the chapel. No, he's least worried about all those. He is just worried about his own status quo, and he is finally restoring that by putting some good words about Whitechapel. He's trying to restore his name. So he actually feels vindicated. He feels vindicated. He feels vindicated. He feels that he's getting the respect back. Getting the respect back. Because that was his worry when he started the journey, whether he will be accepted or not, but he is actually getting respect back here. So that's all about the chapter Plantation Owners.